After 1 year, I'm visiting India again at Hyderabad House. I'm very pleased to have had a good discussion with Prime Minister Modi once again. Also, my gratitude is expressed to Prime Minister Modi as well as the people of India who always extend to us warmest welcome and reception. This year, Japan serves the presidency of G7 and India G20. As the world is standing at history's turning point, fraught with difficulties, what role Japan and India should play? I wish to discuss this fully with Prime Minister Modi. With this thought in my mind, I came to India. At the meeting, I have explained that at the G7 Hiroshima summit this May, from the two viewpoints of upholding international order based on the rule of law and strengthening partnership with the international community going beyond G7, including the countries from what is called Global South. Challenges faced by international community will be taken up. Having conveyed this, I reaffirmed with Prime Minister Modi our commitment to strongly uphold the international order based on the rule of law. Also, Prime Minister Modi shared his thoughts on various themes in the international community, especially in areas of development finance, food security, and climate energy. Views concurred to have close cooperation between G7 and G20. We will cooperate toward the successful G7 Hiroshima Summit and G20 New Delhi Summit. In this context, I formally invited Prime Minister Modi to G7 Hiroshima Summit, and on the spot, my invitation was immediately accepted. Regarding the strengthening of our bilateral relations with India, who is our special strategic global partner, wide-ranging discussion also took place. In security area, holding of second Japan-India 2+2 meeting last September, and implementing Japan-India joint fighter exercise for the very first time in January this year were welcomed as concrete progress.
Now, economic cooperation with India, which continues to grow rapidly, will not only support further development of India, but also creates significant economic opportunities for Japan. In this regard, we welcome that steady progress is being made towards realizing 5 trillion yen of public and private investment and financing from Japan to India in 5 years, the target which Prime Minister Modi and I set in March last year. And we welcome the signing of the aid memoir to confirm our intention.
हम जो एड मेमोर पे अभी हाल ही में एक्सटेंशन हुआ है उसका भी हम स्वागत करते हैं और हमने इस बात पर दोबारा से पुष्टि करी कि हम ऊर्जा और डिकार्बनाइजेशन पर अपने सहयोग को पर काम करते रहेंगे जो हाल ही में एक 300 बिलियन येन का लोन एग्रीमेंट पर भी हस्ताक्षर हुए हैं इससे हमारा सहयोग और भी बढ़ेगा और हम भारत में कनेक्टिविटी को और भी बढ़ाने के लिए खास तौर पर भारत के उत्तर पूर्वी क्षेत्र में
Fiscal 2023 will be the year of Japan-India tourism exchange to promote our exchanges through tourism. I also welcome the renewal of our MOC on Japanese language education. During our working lunch to follow, I hope to have yet another productive discussion on such topics as the Indo-Pacific regional situations. After our working lunch, I will announce my new plan on Free and Open Indo-Pacific, or FOIP, at a lecture event hosted by the ICWA. It gives me a great pleasure to be able to unveil my new vision on the soil of India, which is our indispensable partner in realizing FOIP. I am looking forward to welcoming Prime Minister Modi in Hiroshima in May, and to once again visiting India on the occasion of G20 New Delhi Summit. I thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. That concludes the press statements. Thank you all for joining.
All right, so Prime Minister Modi there, having been invited to the G7 Leaders Summit, which is slated to be held in Hiroshima in May. Prime Minister there extending gratitude to Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, who is on a two-day visit to the country. Prime Minister says that today Japanese Prime Minister invited me to the G7 Leaders Summit, which will be held in Hiroshima in May. Today I told Prime Minister Kishida in detail about the priorities of our G20 presidency. So Prime Minister Modi there, having been invited for the G7 summit that is slated to be held in Hiroshima in May. Meanwhile, a statement that has also been made by the Japanese counterpart, who says that I formally invited Prime Minister Modi to the G7 Hiroshima summit, and on the spot my invitation was immediately accepted. So that's a big takeaway coming in right now of Prime Minister Modi having been invited for the G7 Hiroshima summit that is slated to be held in May. Let's go across to our senior executive editor Abhishek joining us. Abhishek, if you can take us to your key takeaways from the joint statement of India and Japan.
The joint statement is essentially a reiteration of the underlying strength of the India-Japan partnership. As I was mentioning, it's a long-standing, durable friendship which has weathered so many geopolitical storms, and increasingly, in fact, we are seeing coming together of India and Japan in the backdrop of increasing belligerence of China. The G7, where Prime Minister is almost a permanent invitee now, of course, Japan also inviting him. That's the announcement made then. Then Quad, then IPEF, and so many platforms on which the two nations work together. And this is, of course, apart from a very independent and strong, resilient development partnership which exists between the two sides. So, for example, the metro, the bullet train that's coming up between Ahmedabad and Mumbai, with substantial Japanese technological transfer, and of course, funding as part of soft loans. And then many of the projects that have been there in the works for quite some time, and that's an indication of how strong the relationship is. But as of now, of course, whatever developments we are seeing, Samiksha, are happening in the backdrop of recent geopolitical changes, and that's summit that's taken place, essentially reiterating that the two nations really stand together, and Prime Minister Kishida is traveling with a high-powered delegation. Japan happens to be our fifth largest investor, and many of these companies have been around for years and decades together as part of the development partnership. So I think, including the new cooperation areas like the clean energy partnership, like the critical energy component in it, and all those things. So G7, G20, Quad, IPEF, so many platforms on which the two nations really coordinate their steps to make sure that the foreign policies are aligned. I think this is significant, and and it's the fact that it's a working visit. Prime Minister Kishida has flown down, and this is the first of the meetings this year, and they would be meeting again in Hiroshima on the sidelines of G7. Then again back in Delhi in September as part of the G20, and then of course Quad in the month of May itself. Prime Minister will be flying down from Hiroshima to Sydney. I think the number of engagements that take place between the two leaders themselves really shows the kind of intense partnership that exists. Also, it goes back to late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who in fact in many ways sort of shepherded the idea of Quad in the Indo-Pacific as an alliance which makes sure that the Chinese belligerence is contained in some manner, though of course that's a word which nobody uses in terms of whether in that containing China. But that significant geopolitical, geostrategic, economic development partnership really shaping up, and this summit essentially a marker of that.
Well, absolutely. Thank you for sharing us your insights. So, Abhishek, there sharing with us the key takeaways of the joint statement by Prime Minister Modi and his Japanese counterpart. Prime Minister Modi there having been invited for the G7 Hiroshima summit.